Hello, all of you beautiful people. Welcome to our next Star Wars Roundtable, in which we're finally out of the Star Wars prequels, kind of. We're finally getting into the Disney films, at least the spin-off ones for now. Today we're going to be talking about Solo, a Star Wars story, since it is the next film in chronological order after Revenge of the Sith, taking place about 9 or 10 years after that film did. And, the title of this particular review is called Solo, a Star Wars Story a Year Later. And first off, the main reason why is because we're going to be posting this on the 1-year anniversary of this film's release.
That's true.
But, these roundtable reviews have kind of been like, retrospectives that we've had in the Star Wars movies after we've kind of had like our initial thoughts and then kind of looking at things on a deeper level on like a second or third watch. Like I think this might be my third or fourth for me, but I don't know. That's kind of how I approach it.
I think it was 3 for me. 2
It was my fourth.
3.
So we're pretty much like on the same level in terms of like how much exposure we've had to this movie, I guess. Right?
Absolutely. I initially didn't want to actually go and see it. I don't know about you two, but after like all of the drama that surrounded Last Jedi,
Sure.
but then it came out just a couple months later, and there's all these other movies around that same period, like Infinity War, that you could go watch instead. And I was just like, I didn't know if I wanted to go and see that just yet, because I never thought that Solo was a really necessary movie.
I didn't think so either.
Watch.
Right.
And so I initially was just really hesitant, and I waited a couple weeks actually to go and see it. But when I did, I kind of got the same opinion about it that I do now, in that I enjoyed it. Like, it's a fun movie, but I don't know if it's like a great Star Wars movie at all. Like, I definitely consider it a fun heist movie, and with some great character acting. But
yeah, I like that you added that touch at the end, because out of the movies that we've watched so far for our series of reviews anyway, I mean, I did my Clone Wars review, but that's another story.
That's a whole different animal.
Yeah. Out of the movies that we've watched, this one definitely has like the most commitment to it in terms of like, the visuals, the music. Well, I mean, John Williams is a better composer ultimately, but like
I like the score for this one. They had little nods They had little nods. I think on the actual like soundtrack, it's John Powell with John Williams or something like that, where it gets credited with some stuff.
John Powell's great though. I mean, if you go to like the musical score for the How to Train Your Dragon trilogy, like he did all of those movies, and the music's fantastic in those. Otherwise, the acting is good. Overall, the action scenes are pretty well choreographed and filmed. Like, in terms of an actual good production, like this is a very competent movie.
Absolutely.
And it's much easier to watch than the other prequels.
Which is funny, because out of all this, I'm going to kind of jump back to what you were saying about pre-production. Phil Lord and Christopher Miller were supposed to do this movie, if I remember correctly.
And much reshot.
More Disney Star Wars drama.
Well, so if I remember correctly, they were supposed to do this movie, and they had it pretty much done. And then Disney watched and they were like, "No, we're not going to do this. You guys are fired." They hired Ron Howard. They hired an acting coach for Alden Ehrenreich. If I'm saying that right. But they hired an acting coach for him, which I don't really understand, because I think he's a good actor. But they like reshot and rewrote the whole movie or something in the span of like a month and a half, and then spewed it out in May. I liked it. I was looking forward to it because I'm a big Han Solo fan, and it took me a little bit to muscle through the fact that it wasn't Harrison Ford being Han Solo, and I think that was a big problem for a lot of people. But I thought, in my opinion, I think he does a pretty good job of being Han Solo. It's not Harrison Ford, and I mean, unless you could de-age Harrison Ford like 60 years, it's not going to be him.
I mean, Disney's managing to do something like that with Marvel movies.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's besides.
But he does a pretty good job, and there are a couple scenes in this movie where I'm like, that's Han Solo. Like, you know what I mean? He has a couple moments where he shines through as Han Solo, not as Alden trying to be Harrison Ford trying to be Han Solo. It's him being Han Solo, if that makes sense.
I would agree. For the most part, I thought he was a great, like, charming rogue figure. That's kind of like what I mentioned earlier with, like, it's not like a great Star Wars movie, but it's a good heist film. Like, he's a great charming rogue. He's a great lead for this movie. Mm-hmm. Is he Han Solo? No, not to me, didn't. There's a lot of parts where I was like, I can't really see that being Han Solo. But he was still a good actor. He's still good, like, character writing, good character in general. I quite enjoyed watching him.
He fills the part pretty well, I would say, just overall. Like, I pretty much agree with everything you guys are saying. Although I do wonder what his performance would have been like in the Lord and Miller production, now that you're saying that now, because back when he was initially cast, everyone was like, who the heck is this guy? But like me, I saw a film called Hail Caesar back in early 2016 by the Coen brothers, and Alden Ehrenreich was in that cast, and he was probably the best performer in that whole movie. He was someone that they took and made him out to be like, well, he was basically playing like sort of a young John Wayne type, but more of a goofy kind of way. Having seen his performance in that movie and him being cast as Han Solo, I was like, oh, I get that. Although I feel like since the looseness and like the more improv manner in which the Lord and Miller approached their filmmaking, I don't think that having Ron Howard come on to be more of like the workman, like, hey, let's get this done type of approach, really allowed Alden Ehrenreich to live up to his full potential as Han Solo. There could have been more, but like, I don't disagree that he didn't fulfill his job. Like, he did a good enough for what he had,
I think our whole conversation about him right now comes down to one of the main strengths of Solo, is that the characters were incredibly well casted for the most part.
Yes.
The cast and crew did an amazing job, and like we all have our standouts, and there's some that we'll obviously think that didn't do such a great job, but like Woody Harrelson,
Awesome.
I adored every scene that he was in. He was just fantastic. Like, I wrote down in my notes while I was watching this, as soon as they met the crew, like the thief crew, I was like, they're all great. They have such good chemistry together. Like, it feels like they're a band of brothers that have been doing this for a long time, and they're just kind of welcoming Han and Chewie into this group. Like, it felt real to me as I was watching that. And there's other characters that didn't quite meet that standard, but overall, I just loved almost every character in the movie.
I like Jon Favreau as Rio. I mean, Jon Favreau doesn't make an appearance, but Rio is really entertaining. I mean,
his voice works great.
His part of the movie's not that long, but he's one of my favorite parts of this movie because he's just a constant really fast, like quick and witty and really funny. Like he talks about, he says it's gonna get real hot in here when they're trying to steal the train thing, and he goes, "Have you ever been to a Minot roast on Ardennia? Whoop, that's crazy." Like stuff like that, where it's like just funny stuff that entertained me, made me chuckle to myself too.
Yeah,
he really brought the levity.
Yes,
in a moment that really needed it, because the other ones were very serious in that moment.
Yeah,
and some of them would lighten up as the movie would go on, but right then we needed some levity, and he did such a good job with it. So.
It sucks though, because like I agree, that was a really fun team. Like if they kept those actors in the movie longer, they could have gone for even like a Star Wars version of Firefly.
Absolutely.
They could have gone for that vibe, and it would have been awesome. But like,
maybe they could have had a big shot gangster putting together a crew. And
there you go. You're
big shot gangster.
I knew you'd bring that up at some point. But that though is one of my biggest problems with this whole movie. And it's been a problem throughout all the Star Wars, the Disney Star Wars movies up to this point. It's like they literally introduce like all these really fun and interesting new characters into all these movies, and then they don't last over multiple movies. Like especially in Solo, like you have both Rio and I forget her name, but
Val. It's Val.
Val. Okay, so you have both of them.
They last for about 20, 30 minutes.
It's probably not even that. It's like 15 maybe.
Both of them get blasted. Just Val, I think, blows up.
Yep,
and Rio gets blasted like 4 times by the Infus Nest people.
Oh, and don't even get me started on Infus Nest. Ooh.
Oh, we'll get there, I'm sure.
We will.
But then later you have L3, which of course we'll get to later, I'm sure. And then there's Dryden Voss, and then just all these cool characters. Like, they are only in this movie exclusively because Disney was probably like, hey, we probably shouldn't bank on us making a lot more of these spin-off movies, so we'll put these characters in one movie, but because they're not in other movies, we'll just kill them off so that there's no...
Like, it kind of feels like they they wanted to limit themselves to stuff that would be familiar to us, but then they're like, you know what? These people weren't in the sequels, and these people weren't in 4, 5, and 6. Shoot, we can't have them anymore. So they have to be really important for this one movie.
See, but my argument against that is there's a ton of people in 4, 5, and 6 that aren't explicitly mentioned that could have existed outside of the movies. Like Dryden Voss and this little gang of misfits. They could have been on the outside bubble and maybe reappeared in the later ones or just existed outside of it, which they're allowed to. I feel like it wouldn't have been that big of a deal if they'd left them alive.
I mean, for some of these people, I mean, for the crew, they had to go. Because Han Solo wouldn't have left them behind. He was obviously, like, despite him saying that he doesn't have a people, like, he latches onto them from the very second that they let him in.
He finds a lot to relate to them in the end.
And they're like best friends by the time they actually go on the heist, which is why he's not willing to sacrifice Woody Harrelson at the big moment when they're all hanging onto the big container. Like, because he likes these people. He genuinely bonds with them. Like, if they were still around by the time episode 4 came around, I don't know if I could see them, like, him not wanting to be around them.
Mm-hmm. No, that is a very fair point. And, I don't know, just on a surface level, it just kind of bugs me how they introduce these cool characters and then, they're gone.
As we'll get into with Rogue One, like,
Well,
everybody in Rogue One dies.
At least with Rogue One, they have the justification that, like, they needed to get this message to Princess Leia and no one else could have.
Well, but they're like, oh crap, Cassian Andor was actually a cool character. Why don't we make a Netflix spin-off series? Or Disney Plus spin-off series for them.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's kind of like, let's flesh him out a little bit more.
Well, yeah, at least in those movies, it serves them more of a purpose.
Right.
Dying and stuff.
But yeah, and this one, everyone had to go because, well, we don't know what to do with them, so everyone has to go. Goodbye. Thanks for coming in.
There are a couple people that are cast that we haven't mentioned yet. As you go through the movie, you meet L3. Which I don't remember who her voice is.
Phoebe Waller-Bridge, I believe.
Okay.
She's some like British actress and screenwriter.
Oh.
I don't remember what she's working on, but she's working on something big in terms of a screenplay.
Good for her. Donald Glover's in this one, and we have Paul Bettany as Dryden Voss.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime he's on camera, Paul Bettany. I'm a big fan of Paul Bettany. Anytime he's on the camera in this movie, he steals every inch of the screen that he's in.
Yeah,
He's just very entertaining.
He has a pretty good vision of what he wants to be as an actor. So.
Right.
A good vision, huh?
Kira, like, she's the other biggest character that we haven't mentioned yet so far.
She's there. I don't know.
I like some of her scenes. Some of her scenes, she's good at, like, holding that position, like, being the character that she was cast to be. Like, I like her more as the criminal than I do as Han's girlfriend.
Yeah. I mean, that scene where they share together in, like, Lando's closet is just...
It's kind of cringy.
It's cringe.
But, like, when she's, like, pretending to be all, like, the dominant slave trader and she's, like, going around just, like, strutting pretty much, it's like, yeah, she fits that role pretty nicely.
She looks like she's having fun, like, legitimate fun in the role. In the scene, too, where Han and Kira have their reunion on the Crimson Dawn, their ship, you know, I could tell she was enjoying that scene, too, like, playing off the chemistry of Woody Harrelson, Alden, Ehrenreich, and all the other actors, too.
The part that really is just not funny, but it's one of those parts that I'm remembering from the movie, is the part where they're trying to get off Kessel, and they got the turrets out, and she comes running down the Falcon docking ramp, and she's like, ah, and throws those bombs that blow up the turrets. I was like, wow, that's more emotion than I've seen the whole movie from her.
Like, her ending seems so fitting for her because, like you said, it was kind of uncomfortable when she was being solely Han's girlfriend.
Uh-huh.
But when she was being in the part of the criminal, every time she was besides Dryden Voss and like being his second in command, like you could tell that she had that criminal instinct.
Right.
And it was just felt really good. And so her ending, to me, that wasn't bittersweet at all because I was like, yeah, now she's doing what she's supposed to be doing.
Right.
Like, as a character, I like this a lot more than I did.
Right, and I feel bad for Han, but at the same time, it's like, we know what's coming. You're gonna meet somebody better, it'll be fine.
Now, in terms of characters interacting, can we all agree that one of the two best scenes in the movie is when Han and Chewie meet?
Absolutely.
I really liked that. Although
It's a great scene.
the part where he's gurgling, I was like, what the?
Also, I find the implication that Chewie's been eating people this entire time.
That was what I was thinking too. I was like,
That was kind of dark.
A little bit, yeah.
Because it's not just like, oh, let's feed him to the beast, ha ha ha, this is a big joke. No, they've been doing this for a while now. And it's not even like something to hide. It's like in the middle of the
freaking
military
camp.
base.
He's just in a pit with Chewie. Speaking of the Mimban part, so remember?
Trench warfare was amazing.
Yes, but
Yeah.
you remember right before that when he's signing up for the Imperial Academy, and he's like, I don't have any people, and he's like, Solo, which was one of the parts I was like, come on now.
Awful.
But
Awful.
there's a genius scene right after it. They're like, all right, your idea is this, go get on the ship. We're gonna have you flying in no time. And then it cuts to 3 years later, and it's him getting blown off the ground straight up in the air. It's
So
like,
yeah, there's that one Imperial officer who's like, "Come on, men, for the Empire!" Immediately blasted.
Besides that being like one of the most real war parts of any of the
Yes.
movies after the prequels, like the stormtrooper designs were amazing. The mud troopers, I think they're called.
Yeah.
yes.
The designs were awesome. And I love the kind of like insight that it gave into the Empire. Like
Right.
in the old lore, the Empire had good guys and bad guys. Like that was just the government. So you joined the Empire if you were a good guy or a bad guy or whatever.
Yeah, and some guys just joined in order to feed their families, I assume.
Absolutely. And while Disney has kind of like left that behind and made the Empire Nazi
The bad guys.
pretty much. And so they're like generic, really bad and all the time. Like it still felt like there was decent people. Like the original recruiter, like he didn't seem like an awful person. He's just like, well, this is my job. I'm a
Right.
military recruiter.
Like,
Right.
okay, you don't get that much.
Yep.
Solo.
Yeah, besides that
Ugh.
part.
What if he had called him Han Alono? Like, seriously, like.
I
don't
almost
know.
would have preferred if he would have wrote Alono, but then Han was like, let's lower it down a little bit. Solo. How about Solo? And then make it so it was Han's decision to.
Right.
That actually would have been better. Like, it still would have been a little cringe, but like, at least it just wouldn't have been so drawn out. And
Han, no people.
Han, no people. Hey, Han, no people. Hey, Han, no people.
So, that kind of leads me into my biggest problem with this movie is there's a bunch of Han Solo stuff that gets explained in this movie, and I don't think everything needed an explanation.
No.
Like those
No.
gold dice was just a set piece. And I know that in Last Jedi it's part of the thing that Luke gives to her, and that's fine. That's not really bothersome to me. But I didn't need to know that they came from Corellia and this was like his good luck charm.
And it didn't need to be the final shot of the movie either.
Right. And
I 35 different shots in the movie.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean the gun thing was kind of cool, but I mean they could have just given him the gun without breaking it down, and I wouldn't have had a problem with
Are you
it.
talking about the DL-44?
Yeah, his blaster.
I kind of liked how Woody Harrelson kind of like made that customized for him. Like, this is for you. This is our way of bonding.
Well, yeah. So that was one of them that I was like, okay, I could get into that. But like his last name, and there was one other one that I was like, why are we doing this? You know what I mean?
What about his way of shooting first?
I liked that. Okay, I liked that.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I know what you're talking about.
But there were just those parts of the movie that I was like, okay, we really this is just excess in the fan service department that we really could have just left on the editing floor. I don't know.
I kind of felt somewhat similar. Like, what else is there to Han Solo to develop? All those years in between Solo and A New Hope. Like, he doesn't change at all because we now have everything. We have the outfit, we have his mannerisms, we
don't
have
have the
way-
best
We have, well, he kind of stole Lando's entire wardrobe.
closet.
So,
Oh, good point.
like, we have his behavior with Lando. Like, every single callback from the original trilogy is in Solo. Like, how
That's
he
true.
behaves with people, how Lando, Billy D. Williams mispronounced his name, like, how he acts around Chewie, like, why he even calls him Chewie in the first place, because that Chewbacca is too long for him to say. Like,
I didn't mind that part,
But
but
I'm not saying that I mind it, but that every single aspect of Han's personality has been condensed into one movie.
in the span of 3 days.
Yeah, and it's not really to the service of like you said, developing his character much. It's just like, hey, we know that Han Solo gets here, so we're gonna show you different parts in which this leads to this.
Yep.
But it's not so much in service of like a narrative as so much as it is just like, hey, that's cool stuff. You remember Han
Here's
Solo?
this trinket that Han Solo had.
It's a reference movie.
Right.
It
It
feels
is.
like it's just a whole bunch of references, even down to like the stuff about the Navicomputer in the Falcon. Why it has that weird voice? Well, we need to throw in that weird voice here. Why does this happen? Well, because in Solo this happened. Why don't?
Yeah, and the thing is, it's like stuff like that. The casual people who go to these movies just because they go to the movies and don't really have any like sort of emotional connection to this franchise. They're not going to care about this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like this movie works decently enough as its own heist action movie. We've touched on that, but in terms of the stuff you've mentioned, and then also Darth Maul appearing at the very end, it's like
Fan service.
who
Sorry.
other than those who are familiar with the Clone Wars and Rebels
and
material
Rebels.
is going to make sense of that. They're going to think, wait, didn't he die in Phantom Menace?
Yes.
That's gonna stick out to them and be like, why is that in this movie? It's like it doesn't make sense. And
That could
I
be a-
didn't even know who that person was.
That could be a double-edged sword,
Yeah.
though. That could be a, what the heck is he doing in these movies? They clearly didn't, he didn't die, and that could push him to, well, where, to how's Darth Maul alive at the end of Solo, and then they'll go watch Clone Wars. Which I can see is that maybe being a marketing, but still, for the
Sure.
casual person, it's like, what's he doing here?
exactly, yeah. As we've touched on, though, this movie still works decently enough as just like a plain old action movie. Like, take Star Wars out of the equation.
It's still pretty good.
It's decent,
I liked it.
Cinematography could have been lit up a bit better, I'll admit. Like,
You
literally.
said someone was going to mention it. You didn't say you were going to be the one to mention it.
But it's
the lighting.
true.
Well,
Yes.
someone would have had to. I mean, I didn't necessarily.
But it's true.
But,
The
yeah.
lighting in this movie is it's almost like people were complaining about that Game of Thrones episode that was so dark you couldn't see anything. This movie is a little bit like that. There's a lot of silhouette people. There's one shot where Han and Kira are talking in the cantina right before you meet Lando, and they're literally standing and the light's right behind them, so you can't see their faces, but you can see their outlines and they're talking about something. I was like, what the heck is, why?
I watched in my room back at home, and I always have my light on, just because I'm always doing other things while I watch the movie. And during the opening Corellia sequence, I'm like, do I need to turn the brightness up? I can't see a thing. And that wasn't just the part inside of the weird matron's orphan house, which is obviously meant to be dark, but when he's boosting the speeder in the first place, I'm like, I saw the gold dice, I saw that, but I haven't seen literally anything else. Are we supposed to not see his face? Is that supposed to be a surprise at this point?
Right.
Yeah, even my wife, who typically doesn't point out specific things with filmmaking, she in those opening same scenes, she's just like, why is this movie so dark?
I liked the part at the beginning though, how it opens when it shows him breaking in the speeder, and then it's like, psst, come on, psst, and then it starts. I liked that touch, but yeah, I needed the
And
brightness.
even that was a reference to the old movies too, because he hotwired the bunker on.
Oh
Endor.
yeah. I didn't catch
He
that.
knows how to hotwire things.
Sure.
Yeah. The one person we haven't mentioned though, as far as good casting, was Donald Glover.
Yes.
That dude is Lando through and through. And he wasn't Billy D. Williams, he was his own thing, and I really liked him, and he was awesome.
Speaking of things that are subtle references to other movies in this film, the one that I think actually is really effective though is when Lando and Han are having their first game of sabacc, and then Donald Glover pronounces his name as Han. You always look back at Empire Strikes Back and think, why is Billy D. Williams pronouncing his name that way? I'm just trying to say that. But in this movie, it makes sense because he's always mispronounced it, and then Han is it's Han actually. I like that little touch, and then Donald Glover is just doing an amazing impression, but in his own specific way.
I think the chemistry between Han and Lando is really funny. The part at the end when they do the second dice game and they win the Millennium Falcon, there's a part where Han and Chewie walk up. We better rip off your arms. He's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And he sees the card and he's like, just kidding, we were kidding. He's like, yeah, I knew you guys weren't going to get me. And then Han goes, no, you didn't.
And Lando's face the whole time like...
And even that, another reference to Episode 5. Because when he first goes to Han on the Millennium Falcon pad after they get to Cloud City, he's like, and Han's like, whoa, 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 what? But then they hug, and
Right.
it's all just...
That part was really funny because Alden Ehrenreich, the delivery of that line is just hilarious to me. No, you didn't.
Yeah. Another scene that I really love is, gosh, it's escaping me now. Oh, the Maelstrom scene.
Yes.
Or as Lando pronounces it, the Maelstrom. Again, Lando with his pronunciations, but it's funny.
Terrible.
I was always a fan because I read the original books and everything, and the original books had that entire space completely filled with black holes. It wasn't just like a big maelstrom of gas and ice and asteroids and everything. It was actually just black holes everywhere. And it didn't make any sense, but that was what was just so fun about it, is that there's only a couple paths through it in any way. But like seeing the different interpretation of that in this new movie, I actually found myself enjoying it quite a bit because it's not what you were expecting, but it's good. Like it's still enjoyable. It's still interesting. And they used it to the best of its advantage and all of the interesting escape from the TIE fighters and then the giant Cthulhu monster and all that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, plus the visual effects are amazing. I love the way that it's edited. Like, it's clearly edited in the same pattern as like the other Star Wars movies.
Right.
But to its credit, like it does it very well, and it's a very fast-paced, fun action scene with, again, amazing music from John Powell.
That's the part that my dad, who's not a big Star Wars fan, he said, this is Star Wars. This is what I remember when I went back to the original 4, 5, and 6 in theaters back in the 70s. And like he said, that was when he knew that this was a Star Wars movie, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So I think with we'll get into Rogue One, but I think with Solo 2, there's enough in the movie that captures what was good about 4, 5, and 6, if that makes sense. You know, because you have the classic, like, flying through the asteroids, and the heroic music when they're fighting with blasters, and the lightsaber fights, and everything that makes you think that it's Star Wars. Well, there's a part in the Maelstrom where they're flying around, and, I mean, the music's there, and they're flying away from TIE fighters, and you're just like, it captures enough of the nostalgia of Star Wars to remind you of Star Wars. And Rogue One does a good job of that too. We'll talk about that later. But Solo does, there's a couple parts in this movie where you're like, this is why this is a Star Wars movie. Specifically the Maelstrom scene. And then when they're doing the Kessel, breaking the coaxium out of Kessel, when they're all standing at the bottom of the Falcon shooting the bad guys and throwing bombs around. And by the way, when Chewie picks up that guy and suplexes him into the ground, that was awesome. Yeah. But it's like stuff like that that just made me feel like this was just a good Star Wars movie, and I really enjoyed it.
Another moment I really enjoyed in that same type of way, where I was reminded this is the kind of Star Wars vibe I love, is when they're about to exit the Maelstrom at the end, and then when they turn on the headlights of the Millennium Falcon and they see the eye of the Cthulhu-looking monster, all of them at the same time go, ah! It's so perfect. It's like that kind of humor that was there in the same like asteroid attack scene from Empire Strikes Back. It was there in full swing.
Yeah. I like that. One more thing about the Maelstrom. When they get the coaxium into the reactor to jumpstart the ship, it doesn't work. And they're like, oh, crap. And then it's like,
the thing shuts down.
The whole ship shuts down, and you're just like, yep, that's the Millennium. That's the Millennium Falcon.
Do we want to mention anything about the third act before we close up, or?
We all have different reasons for thinking it's not the best part of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So I think
it's pretty interesting. You have to watch it. After the first watch, you're just like, oh yeah, I know what's coming. It's fine.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I have my issues with like logistics of how everything works, like, characters being in one place or the other. But I mean, I don't really want to go into nitpicks because I think that's like harmful criticism sometimes. Like, when you're pointing too much at small details that don't really matter in the end, like in terms of what the characters are doing, like it works. And if they are gonna make eventually another solo movie, which because of the box office I doubt it.
Yep.
But well, you know, there's enough there to where if they leave it open for another movie, that's cool. But there's a good resolution.
Yep, I don't think any of us would be like seriously disappointed or dismayed if there was a sequel.
Oh no.
And we liked the characters, and even if the ending wasn't the greatest, like it still ended on a decent note for most of us. So
I liked it. I think it's a pretty good movie. I'm a pretty big Han Solo fan, but I liked it. I think it's decent.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Shall we give our grades then?
Absolutely.
All right. So I guess I'll start off. You know, personally, I give it a C+ because it's one of those passable movies for me to where, like, you know, I prefer a movie and like a larger franchise to have a deeper impact on a story, which ultimately Solo doesn't for me. But there's enough going on with like its production, like good performances, good filmmaking, and just some very fun and memorable scenes to where I can watch it and like nothing in it is really going to offend me at all. Like some things in the prequels, even though some of the high points definitely transcend the low points of those movies. So yeah, I enjoy it well enough, and I don't really mind if it's on.
I would probably give it an 8. I'm a big Han Solo fan. It checked all the boxes for me. I think it was good. There's a couple parts where I'm like, that's not so good, but it's overshadowed by the good Han Solo-iness of this whole movie. So I'll give it an 8.
For me, when I was watching it in the theaters, like I thought it was alright. I thought it was fun. But when my dad watched it for the first time, and like I said, he's not a huge fan of Star Wars, like he thought it was a fun movie. He thought it was a good Star Wars movie. And that was enough to like just make me think about it more and think, yeah, this is enjoyable. It might not be the most impactful, but you know what? Like I had a good time. And so that's why I give it an 8 out of 10.
Fair enough. I don't want to make it seem like I'm a curmudgeon because I give like a lower score than you guys so much, but I don't know. Like at least we can all say that we enjoyed it.
I
like on a
Absolutely.
completely unironic level.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Not because of the memes, but because it's actually a good movie.
Well, there aren't even really any Solo memes anyway.
Well, there are a few.
I mean, there's some, but like if you're comparing the ratio between Solo and the
Episode
prequels.
3.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot of them in the prequels.
So we'll get back to the memes in Rogue One. That's when.
Well,
that's when they kick back up again.
Well, yeah, because the Force is one with us, and we're one with the Force, right?
Absolutely. But you're a farmer, a man of your talents.
I can't imagine why you guys would say memes like that. You said I had to.
Well, this is my achievement, my channel, not yours!
Are we blind? Deploy the garrison! Okay.
I forgot about all those things. Jeez.
Rogue One is going to be the best.
Rogue One is...
That's going to be a fun discussion.
So, if you guys don't already know, we're moving into the finer wine collection of Star Wars, where Rogue One, Episode 4, Episode 5, Return of the Jedi, and Force Awakens, like, we're getting into the point where there are some pretty good, like, these are the golden, Oscar-worthy Star Wars movies.
And then right before we get Rise of Skywalker, I'm sure there'll be a fun, divisive conversation.
We'll have lots of fun with The Last Jedi.
That'll be
I
a
tell
fun
you
one.
what.
It'll be a 3-hour discussion.
Jeez.
Better clear up the phone on.
Might as well put it on like Apple Podcasts or something at that point. Part 1, Part 2. Thanks for watching, guys. You know, it's always fun to record these roundtable discussions together. Thanks so much to Justin and Jared for being here. And they will be here again in the near future because we are going to be reviewing the whole entire John Wick trilogy. At least, it's a trilogy for now. Well, there might be more movies, who knows? But we are going to be discussing all 3 of those movies in a roundtable discussion. And then next month we'll have one for Rogue One. So look forward to that as well. Otherwise, if you like this content, please check out more on my Facebook, Letterboxd, or Instagram pages for stuff that's going to be on there that I don't post here. But otherwise, thanks for watching, and you have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.